Good.
So I like to stay, being a teacher, you like to stay in their time frames more or less so that people can go when they need to go. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Spiritbringer, and I want to just welcome everybody to this 4th annual Flaring Forest celebration. And I just want to see a show of hands of how many people have been at all 4 of the Flaring Forest celebrations for the Universe Story.
I think I have.
Brian, you have not. You weren't there last
I was sick. I would have been there. That counts. Come on.
Right.
That's good.
But it's a time 3 years ago that we came together to celebrate 3 anniversaries, and we do that again tonight. And the first anniversary, of course, is our beloved Thomas Berry's anniversary of his birth, 106 years ago in 1914 of the Common Era. So we celebrate that tonight. And then Thomas and Brian, 28 years ago, released the epic book, The Universe Story. And Brian even signed this copy a couple years ago. So 3 years ago was the 25th anniversary, and that was one of the main reasons why this celebration started. And then 3 years ago, we inaugurated the Universe Story calendar and the Universe Story calendar book through the initiative. And so we're celebrating the 4th calendar coming out this next week. So it's an anniversary, but as Thomas told us so clearly, we don't celebrate enough. So the bottom line is celebration. The bottom line is celebration of the human family, the earth community, and the universe community of beings. So that's why I'm here, and I think that's why a lot of us are here, and for many other reasons. So I don't know, Betty, Kislov, and Brian, if you remember us gathering together on June 3rd, 2016 at Olivetto's in Berkeley by the BART station.
Yeah.
That's where the 3 of us got together, and I told Brian about this crazy idea of having a New World calendar to transcend and include the Gregorian calendar. And they both jumped right on board, and within the next 14 months, 15 months, we had our first celebration on November 9th of 2017. And so the 3 of us came together, planning for this event 3 years ago, and now it's 4 celebrations later. So a little bit of the history, but for me it was celebrating the universe story because it's so essential and core to who I am, and I think to a lot of who you are. And so needed to celebrate. So bring people together and celebrate. So that first one, John Diller led us in interplay. We had a dance. Marcus had music for us at the end of the night. So it was all about celebration. It continues to be about celebration, even though our world seems like a mess in some ways. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. And so I want to start out by singing a song that tells the story of the universe, as Thomas told us. In order to tell any story, you have to tell the story of the universe. So we have to start tonight with the universe story. And I didn't even ask Brian for permission, but I named this song the Universe Story Song. So hopefully, Brian, you'll give me permission tonight to keep that title.
Yes.
So here's the story as we begin. 13.8 billion years have passed since our glorious beginning, when our story of unity started unfolding our universe. Twinkle, twinkle, came our stars, octillions in the trillion galaxies. 4.6 billion years ago, a supernovae stars explode, birthing our sun and sun's planets, earth and life through photosynthesis. Twinkle, twinkle came worms and fish 500 million years ago. Next came our land, insects and trees, dinosaurs, flowers, mammals and birds, up until whales swam in our sea 25 million years ago. Twinkle, twinkle, our human species joins our story 7 million years ago. For the last 1.6 million years, we humans discovered fire, speech, and music. Goddesses, agriculture, patriarchy, religion, industry, now consciousness, now consciousness. Twinkle, twinkle, the universe story unfolds each precious moment in beauty. Twinkle, twinkle, the universe story. And so we celebrate our great story, the new story, the story of the universe, the journey of the universe, all the names that we do the great work under. And we need to continue to realize that it's up to us. And we're the ones that need to continue to be awake and to learn and to bring people together and celebrate in whatever way you can, especially through nature and through, the night skies have been so beautiful lately because of the stark coldness here in California. And I want to start out by, I want to read a quote from the Universe Story book on page 268 from the epilogue. And the epilogue is called Celebration. Right, Brian? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this quote is so beautiful. Until the present, we have not been able to celebrate properly this larger story of the universe. Yet this is the high achievement of our scientific inquiry into the universe. Once we begin to celebrate the story of the universe, we will understand the attraction that so draws our scientists to their work, why every detail of our scientific inquiry becomes so important. Now we're able to celebrate, and we're doing that tonight. And so I'd like to give you a little bit of the schedule for tonight so that you have an overview. We hope to go to about 6:15. And if people can stay on a little longer, if there's a lot of, great questions and stuff, hopefully Brian and John can maybe stay a little longer. I know I can, maybe Elizabeth. So we'll go till 6:15. I will introduce Elizabeth McAnally, and then she will help us with some of her artistic capabilities. And she will introduce John Grimm, because she is the moderator along with me. And they will have a conversation together for 15 minutes, 20 minutes about Thomas Berry, relationship with John and Thomas, and the new story. Then there'll be some time for questions and answers between those, what John and Elizabeth have talked about. And Elizabeth graciously said that she will lead us in a stretch so that we can get up and stretch a little bit. And then I will introduce Brian. We'll have a discussion about the 10 years that it took to bring about the Universe Story book and the initiative. And then we'll have some questions and answers after that part. Sound good? Sound good, everybody? Good. All right, that's great. So I think there was one last bit of my presentation before I introduce Elizabeth, and that's just a short song by our friend Jim Conlon called him the musician of the movement. And you know who I'm talking about, Betty? Peter Mayer. And I think it's a song that hopefully we will leave with, as well as be ready to hear these stories in the next few minutes. And the name of the song is called Awake by Peter Mayer. Clouds are swift, rocks are ancient, mountains are high, oceans great, winds are restless, trees are patient, you, my child, are awake. Waves are crashing, rivers churning, planets twirling, stars ablaze. Storms are raging, atoms whirling. You, my child, are awake to perceive all these wonders. Count the beats of a blackbird to tell a story and dance and sing. All the splendors of the universe are very happy that you came because they needed someone to see them. You, my child, are awake to perceive all these wonders. Count the beats of the blackbird to tell a story and dance and sing. Seeds are hopeful, right, Chris? Dewdrops fleeting, oak trees crooked, redwood straight. But they are not known to the sleeping. You, my child, are awake. You, my child, are awake. You, my child. Let's stay awake and celebrate all night tonight, everybody. Thank you.
Good.
And so my great privilege, Elizabeth has been with me all the way through, all 4 years. She's said yes whenever I've asked her to help us celebrate the universe story. And as many of you know, she teaches Tai Chi and Qigong. And she is the newsletter editor at the Forum at Yale for Religion and Ecology. And she's a new author as of a couple of years ago of the book, Loving Waters Across Religions. I highly recommend it. I have a copy. And she is just a wonderful, beautiful person that is willing to help us celebrate tonight. And she's also a very gifted musician. So with that, Elizabeth, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's really great to celebrate with you all. I wish we could be in person, but this is definitely the next best thing to being in person. And it's actually a little better because we get to see so many people from around the US and maybe even beyond, I'm not sure. But it's great to be with you. And Tom, thank you for organizing this each year. It's been really nice to join together in community and to celebrate. And yeah, so Tom asked me to do some music. So I decided to pick up my flute and I will play 3 songs. 2 of them, the first 2 I wrote, and then the third one is my rendition of a Tibetan song. Okay.
throat.
Thank you. And then I'll do one more song. privilege to introduce John Grimm, a very good friend of mine who's also one of my dear employers. And I don't know, I hope you all know John, but if you don't, I'll give you a little bit of a background. John teaches at Yale and in the School of Environment and also at Yale Divinity School. And with his wife, Mary Evelyn Tucker, Mary Evelyn and John, they have founded the Forum on Religion and Ecology at Yale. And that came out of a series of conferences based at Harvard. The series is called World Religions and Ecology. And there are wonderful volumes for each of those conferences that I highly recommend. And I also recommend checking out the Forum website. You can see how this emerging field of religion and ecology has really flourished in the last 20 or more years now. John is the author of the book called The Shaman, Patterns of Religious Healing Among the Ojibwe Indians. And he edited the Harvard published book called Indigenous Traditions and Ecology, in the Interbeing of Cosmology and Community. John is one of, John with Mary Evelyn, they've both edited many of Thomas Berry's books, and they wrote the wonderful biography of Thomas Berry that was published last year by Columbia University Press. And yeah, I could say much more about John, past president of the American Tayard Association. And yeah, John, you're such a wonderful friend, and you have a great heart and a wonderful sense of humor. And we're really happy that you could join us today. And for this next part, we would love to hear how you remember Thomas Berry. We'd love to hear, to get a sense for Thomas's presence as a person, as a deep wellspring of inspiration, and especially how it was to live with Thomas during that golden year at the Riverdale Center. So if you'd like to start talking about anything, we would just love to hear from you.
Elizabeth, what a beautiful and lovely introduction. Thank you so much. I sense every one of us has to live with the burden of our life, huh? I'm so pleased to carry the burden of what you described with Mary Evelyn. She makes the walking so pleasant with a good companion, and how delightful it is to be with you all tonight. I can recall Thomas saying more than once that opening line from the Analects, the second phrase of the opening line, how delightful it is when friends gather from afar. And soon after that, he would make some comment like, you know, we never really see our own face. We see it in the mirror, but it's reversed, of course, and then we're frozen in a kind of a gaze of ourselves. But he says, you look in the eyes of your friend and you see yourself. And yeah, that delight that you can find, that Mencius spoke of also, that delight in living a life, a meaningful life. And I was just, from the beginning, coming on around 7:30 tonight with Tom and others, you know, to be with you all is to take that delight in a shared journey together, in a sense of coming together, as Thomas put it, in celebration tonight on November 9th, the anniversary of Thomas's birthday. And at the Riverdale Center, of course, the cake would be lit now, you know, and the candles would be up, and Tom would call the children out. Brian Brown and Amaryllis Cortillo, their daughter Alexis and Jason, Justin would come forward, and the two oldest girls of B. DeBerry, Johanna and Annalise. There's such lovely pictures of them. You're gathered around the cake, and Thomas would want the children to blow out the candles. I would think some of those moments that Thomas was, he was reflecting on those opening verses of Genesis where the wind or the breath over the chaos, and the sense of the disequilibrium, and the breath of children, the creative presence of children. And I guess I'm in that mood tonight. I feel like the child in all of us. Tom is drawing out this celebratory moment, and I was very childlike when I came out in 1968 to New York City. I'm a North Dakotan, and I was studied at a Benedictine school and got a really solid Western civilizational background. So I was not intimidated by New York. I had a brother on the island. So I came out with a lot of confidence, and I drove across the country from North Dakota to New York with my mother. My father had died some years before, and my mother had gone back to school and become a nurse. And so she was ready to take this journey. And, her mind, my parents are not just simply from last century, they're from the century before that. And my father was born in 1898. So I kind of have this 200-year vista, we know someone from 200 years ago, and we will know someone beyond that. And my mother's, we would drive, she would say, John, you have to turn off here. You have to turn off here. We're going by this, and this city is on the map. And no, Mom, we can stay on the interstate. You don't have to go through all the towns in the old days. So we were driving out to New York, where I would undertake this adventure. And I walked into Thomas's office, and this is my first experience, and I think there's many of us here who, when you interacted with Thomas, you had something similar. I said to him after he had welcomed me and made some remarks, I said, I come from a Catholic background, so I know the decorum, but I don't exactly know what to call you. Are you doctor or father or professor? And he sat back in his chair, and his body language was exquisite. He just put everything at ease, and he says, call me whatever you want to call me. And so from that time to this day, he's always been Father Thomas to me. And some people say, oh, well, that's your Catholic background, and it's possible. But actually for me, I think I moved into a Greek Orthodox mode, where the use of the word Father has this sense of the spiritual guide. And Thomas had that capacity, as we all know. He's guided us into this universe moment that we all are. And he's guided us into this birthday moment that Elizabeth's music lifts us into the spheres that Brian has given us such a feel for. So I came in 1968, and I entered into studies with Thomas Spiritbringer, and those first 2 years were very interesting to see Thomas moving his way forward from cultural historical studies in the interaction of cultures and civilizations. One might say today the dialogue of religions, but for Thomas it was much larger than that, obviously. But he was moving from that cultural historical mode into his engagement with both the bridging of cosmology and ecology. And it was by 1970 that, as I understood and could see him making the turn, he had a firm grasp of where it was that he was going. And one of these moments, it's not, it's a short story, but it doesn't exactly capture this, but for me, it's an insight into it. We were downstairs, and namely we, the students of Thomas at the time, downstairs at the Rathskeller at Fordham University, where we were all studying with Thomas. And he was introducing us in this course to Chinese thought. And at one point now we were dealing with the I Ching. And so having beers down in the Rathskeller, we had our pennies, and we're throwing pennies to build a hexagram. The I Ching is a sequence of the engagement with broken and solid lines forming 6 lines that would be a hexagram. that had a way of opening the wisdom of this particular text and of the Chinese tradition. And so many of us at the time, we were fixated on the divination character of the I Ching. And Thomas was so skillful not to prevent that, or not to say it was short-sighted, but to allow that kind of raising of a question, the throwing of the coins to get a hexagram. And Thomas would have the sense then to open our eyes, listen to what this text is saying to you about the wisdom of this tradition. And so again, these early years, it was a engagement with cultural historical studies, the telling of the stories of the universe, the building of cosmologies, and then Thomas's bridging into this environmental concern. And through all of this, of course, the community at Riverdale Center was not established until later in the 70s. But the sense of community coming out of the students at Fordham and surrounding Tom was carried towards the Riverdale Center. Then so by 1977, when I went to live at the Riverdale Center with Brian Brown and Valerio Ortolani, and then there were some Passionists also in the upper floors of the Riverdale Center, this community was intact. And it was already, you could sense it was moving towards an ecozoic consciousness. There was in that Riverdale Center a celebratory mode that was searching for ways to talk about this emerging community. When I came to the Riverdale Center in 1977, I was in the dissertation mode. Those of you who are engaged or have engaged with academic studies know that this is a particularly depressing moment in a person's career, and also holds all of the possibilities that you hope and aspire to. So you're caught in this endless contradiction and a kind of an endless dream, and showing it in an empty-headed face. In a way, I have a dear friend who went shopping one day, and he was in line at to check out the grocery counter, and suddenly the clerk says, no. Someone was trying to cut in front of him because he wasn't moving. And the clerk says, no, you can't come in. That little old man is ahead of you. And that little old man, of course, was like 29 or 30 years of age. He had that fixated face of someone in dissertation mode. So there I was at the Riverdale Center, and I was trying to make sense out of my life. And at the time, New York was in the throes of economic woes, and along Palisades Avenue, which was a magnificent setting by the Hudson River, there were several large estates that had fell into vacancy, and they were simply not abandoned, but they were no longer being used. And in some of these, I would go out from the center and I would go down the properties down towards the river, and I found a group of pheasants who were living in one of these properties. I'd go visit them. When I first got to the center, I learned where they lived, and I came back from one of those visits with the pheasants and was in the sunroom of the Riverdale Center, and I noticed that one of the sofas had some rips in it, so I got out some thread that I carried from a career making furniture and started sewing the sofa together. And Tom came in, and Thomas looked at me and he said, you're not working on your dissertation right now. And I said, no, I'm trying to pull something together though. He sat with me for a while and he said, John, did I ever talk with you about Dante's exchange with Virgil in the Divine Comedy? And I looked at him. I knew the Divine Comedy from my undergraduate days, but I didn't have that particular moment clear in my mind. And he said, Virgil led Dante through the Inferno and the Purgatorio, but he could not go into the Paradise section. He was still among those who had not been baptized and had to be redeemed before he could go into heaven at the end of the days. And Dante, when he left Virgil to go into paradise, was utterly distraught. He had this, he was himself nurtured by the writings of Virgil, and Dante's Divine Comedy, his epic, was based on Virgil's Aeneid. And so distraught as he was, Virgil said to him, and Tom would, I just still hear his voice saying, "Alza la barba, lift up your beard and crown and mitre yourself over yourself." And that simple moment has stayed with me all these years, that Tom didn't put his hands on me and say, "I now impart to you." He's not that kind of teacher, nor was he this kind of teacher. You know, he was this kind of teacher. This sense that it's crown and mitre yourself over yourself. He was opening the world to people. He was asking us to see the world. That lovely moment in the great story film where Thomas is his voice and he's talking about, I went out outside of the center and I had this talk to give them. What shall I say to them? And I looked at the moon and she said, "Tell them my story." You know, it's the threaded moment through all of this, crown and mitre yourself over yourself. The moon is crowned and mitred over herself, and she's speaking her story. And so Tom opened me to that possibility also of what it is that we do in this life, how we tell our story. And you're all aware that in that year, 1977 to 1978, he wrote the essay, The New Story, the New Cosmic Story. And it's such a powerful expression of his thought. It is in some ways a summation of much of his thought. And that penultimate paragraph where he talks about if the universe, if everything that brought us to this, everything that came before us, if we have confidence that it brought us to this moment, then that gives us the confidence also to go forward. I'm paraphrasing in a very poor manner, which was such an elegant paragraph. And that penultimate paragraph in the new story is also a summary moment for me of that golden year when I lived at the Riverdale Center with these dear friends. And we gathered in these moments of celebration. And Mary Evelyn was so instrumental in bringing the American Teilhard Association, these monthly lectures where the community would gather, and there would be insights, just these pearls of wisdom that we would meet from people like Nicky Perlis, or the Benedictine who came and after his rather striking remarks about Bernard of Clairvaux, and Thomas, of course, raised the question about Bernard's interaction with the natural world. And didn't Bernard say something about Clairvaux that's pertinent for our exchange with the natural world? And this Benedictine was absolutely tongue-tied and lost. He couldn't make that connection that Tom saw so immediately. These exquisite moments at the Riverdale Center, and these lecturers came forward and had a chance to speak their piece. And maybe Brian, when your time comes too, I don't recall if there was a moment when you gave a talk, but I know that you're aware of this, of that lecture series also. The sense then of what all of us were about were writing dissertations, those of us who were living at the center. And I had made a transition in my studies by the end of my coursework. I was caught on the shoals of language. I wanted to study Buddhism. And eventually I was captured by the images of the Buddha as a healing personality and got interested in shamanism. And as the languages increasingly presented an obstacle to me, Thomas saw that there was something here about that pathway of healing that would be good for someone like Grimm to take up. And so he suggested I go back out and see if I could engage with First Nations, indigenous peoples in my region, and begin to take up those studies. And the exchange, and Elizabeth, what's my time? I don't want to take other people's time.
Well, we actually might need to open up for questions, but I could go and listen to you all night. I love these stories. Yeah.
Well, let me just conclude by saying the transition to an encounter with native indigenous thought and the wisdom, it completely established a new way of understanding Thomas Berry's thought too, namely the cosmological thought, the understanding stories that are told in native communities with all of the insights into their worlds dovetailed, matched what Thomas was groping for also. So let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. These are so good. Yeah. So Tom just mentioned, does anybody have any questions for John before we move on to Brian?
You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
They can unmute themselves.
Oh, or you can unmute yourself.
Well, maybe we should save questions for at the very end then.
I think Laura's trying to talk.
Oh,
Laura?
yeah.
Laura, are you trying to talk? No. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. How about Tom? Would you like to say some words?
Not really. Maybe we should. Some questions might come up at the end with John and Brian, and maybe we can go into this little stretch before we hear.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah. Tom had asked me if anybody would like to take a stretch break. Please take a moment and feel into your body. You remember that you are living and breathing this cosmic matter, and so definitely take a moment and feel it. Stretch, and then whenever you're ready, we can come back and hear from Tom and Brian.
Feels good. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Elizabeth. Just really great to hear these stories of relationship with Thomas and the new story. And now we're going to focus a little more in on the universe story, which came out of the new story. And I have the privilege of introducing Brian again. I introduced him a couple times, but just wanted to remind everybody that, not to promote it, but he did write the foreword to the book that we started 3 years ago, promulgated at the first Flaring Forth, the Universe Story calendar. And so that really got my juices flowing and my love of Brian and his teaching over the years. So it's been a great 3 years. And everybody could probably say what I'm going to say about Brian's past, but he's just a good friend to all of us. I think most of us that know him and have read his work and seen his videos and his movies. He's presently teaching at California Institute for Integral Studies, CIIS, and professor there. He's co-author of The Universe Story with Thomas Berry. as well as Hidden Heart of the Cosmos, which just came out with its revision, which I'm kind of upset with, because I wanted to see the revision of the Universe story first. I got it in there, Brian. I got it in there. And the film, The Journey of the Universe, with Mary Evelyn Tucker and so many other people, and that whole program is just so awesome. I still love the Powers of the Universe courses that I think Allison was in that class, I think, or some people were in the class. And, just the many videos and talks that he's done, but mostly, like I said, the relationships that he's had. And so thank you, Brian, again, we missed you last year. You got sick, so you weren't able to part of it, but now we got you here. And what I really wanted to focus on, I think a lot of people want to know about the time between 78 with the new story and 82, when you started writing, getting together and researching and communicating, conversing about the Universe story. I want to know that about that time. We have the acknowledgments in the Universe story book where you talk about the symposiums that John Grimm was a part of, and Mary Evelyn and Jim Conlon, many people, probably some people on the video tonight. But can you remember like the first deep conversation that you had with Thomas about the possibility of writing the Universe story?
Yeah, I actually can. I am. So, I mean, when I first met Thomas, even before I met him, I had the idea of it'd be so great to tell the story. I mean, that's before I met him, because I read his pamphlet on the new story. At any rate, so I was teaching at Holy Names College, and California. I remember my salary was $14,000 a year, and I couldn't. I had Denise and I had two sons, and I just couldn't survive. It was just not possible. So I was just going to go back and live in my in-laws' basement. I mean, just the thought of living in my in-laws' basement, just thinking about it right now, is like, oh my God. But I wanted to write, I wanted to write the story. And then a friend of mine got me a grant. And so, wow, I could stay in California. And the first thing I did was to, Thomas Berry had come out to give some talks at Matt Fox's Institute. Some of us were there. At any rate, so I had this grant, and I said, Thomas, why don't we write the story together? And so he didn't, he wasn't as enthusiastic as I wanted him to be. But inside, I think he was enthusiastic as I wanted him to be. He was, sometimes he thought about things so much, and he knew that committing to a book like this would be a major undertaking. So at any rate, he right away said yes. And then when he was done with the talk, we drove to the airport. And that's actually when we talked about the book. But this led to really, I guess it'd be the greatest conversation of my life. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to check that out with my wife. I mean, but maybe when I asked her to marry me or something. But this was like the greatest intellectual conversation of my life. And it took place in the Oakland airport. And so I just said, what do you think? What should we write about? And he went through and gave me the whole outline of the book. I had this little spiral notebook. I was just writing like crazy in the Oakland airport. We were in the bar, all right? And it was just so exciting. God, it was so wonderful. And so I every year I go back to that bar, and sometimes more than once, and order a glass of wine and just sit there and remember it. It changed from a bar to a restaurant to a takeout place, then back to a bar. But whatever it is, I'm there, remembering that moment of discussing it. Thanks for the question, Tom.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So then proceed on from there into the 10 years of symposiums and research, and like how many symposiums did you have where you had experts from all the different fields in science and humanities and religions and stuff, where you shared the text of the universe story and had them critique it? Or I don't know, maybe I'm off base with that, but what happened during those 10 years of writing and research?
Yeah, well, we did have an amazing symposium that really was organized by Mary Evelyn. Mary Evelyn, did John help you at all with that one? You're muted. You're muted.
I think you and I did it.
That's what I think. I didn't want to leave John out, but
Yeah. You had all the people. I just, we did it together, but you were the leader.
well, when you say you and I did it, that's code for Brian, you were there, but I did the work. Mary Evelyn did all the work. It was great. And we had, we had geologists, we had chemists, historians, physicists, storytellers, just like all these amazing people. And then they all read the manuscript, and it was just fantastic. We had the one deep ecologist, George Sessions, was there, and he said, I can only stay for part of the day, so I had to talk during that time. I go, George, what's so important you can't stay for the whole day? He goes, look, I'm getting divorced, and my ex-wife is going to break into my house and take my stereo, so I have to get back there. There were some dramatic moments. It was great. The other, so like we did that, Tom, and so we interacted with people, but mainly it was just hanging out with Thomas. I mean, he would fly out to California, and then we would just get together and talk. And I tried, I first said, Tom, would you like to stay at our house? And he didn't want to. He wanted some privacy, and I'm the same way. And so I said, well, how about staying at this place? I showed him like an Embassy Suites. And he goes, oh no, it's way too fancy. So we sort of bounced down, and then we got to this motel, and it was really kind of run down. I mean, it wasn't a place I would pick, but he was so modest and so unassuming. He goes, yeah, this would be fine. And so we would we would meet in this kind of crummy motel in the room, and just talk and take notes and so forth. And then one day we were leaving the motel room to go across the street to get some coffee, and this police car comes roaring in. Two guys jump out, they break down the door, and they handcuff this guy and haul him away. And and Thomas looks at me and goes, yeah, maybe we should find another place. God, it was just hysterical. But, you know, he was just nonchalant about it. It's like, yeah, maybe this was a little too dangerous. But another great moment. So we moved up a notch, right? And then nobody knew where we were. I mean, Thomas, you know, we just in this motel room, and then the phone rings, and he picks it up and he's talking, and somebody had tracked him down, right? And so he's, you know, and then he listens for a while, and then he hands the phone to me and he says, "I think it's for you." Right? So I take the phone, I go, "Hello?" Get this. It's the world's largest scientific organization, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And they want Thomas to come and give a talk on the new story, right? You know, this new integral story and so forth. And he didn't want to be bothered. So he just handed it across to me, right? I mean, it was like a thrilling opportunity. And the thing is, the universe story hadn't yet been finished. We were in the middle of it, writing it, but somehow another word got to some person. I mean, I'll never forget that. It was in Boston, and like there are all these amazing people there. Lynn Margulis, right, who came up with the whole thing with Gaia and endosymbiosis. She was in the room, and it was, but it was, you know, looking back on it, it was the way Thomas, he would usher people into their destinies. He would do this. I mean, that's an explicit sort of thing, a conference and all the rest of it, but he had this amazing capacity to see into the souls of people. He would see it, and I mean, I say this with such confidence because I know the vast majority of you here had that experience. It just, you know, you're just listening to them and you're discovering who you are. It was so remarkable. Really something. But just to finish with the the sequence that led in addition, Tom, to like all these experts and so forth.
Yeah.
That but it went like this. The first was meeting in the Oakland airport, right? That was the first. The next step was to transform those notes with years of study, you know, of all these sciences. I had to learn all that stuff, you know, to really get the whole picture. And so then I was so excited about it. The first rendition was in Canonical to the Cosmos, a series of lectures at Matt Fox's Institute. And Mary Shenandoah was there. She's the one who doesn't want us to look at her, but she was really a central portion. Mary, are you asleep? Are you asleep, Mary? But she was central because she got the whole picture of this new story in the.
Brian, I'm awake. Of course, I'm not ignoring this. I'm totally involved.
Yeah, no, Mary was like just really, she captured the thrill of it. And so that was the second. And then the third, where we actually wrote the book itself. I remember one last little thing about the writing of the book. You know, we'd write chapters and then we would share them back and forth, and then I was like really wanting it to move forward, and Thomas, he just had such a deep sense of what is required to tell the truth about the universe. He was in no rush, right? That's why the thing took 10 years, it's because he wanted it right. And I learned so much from him because I'm a very impatient person. I've just learned it just had to go with a deeper process. But at any rate, we got down to the last chapter, and it was on the Ecozoic, and throughout all the writing, he had been just affirming me, and without. I said, "Well, let me write that." I wanted to move it forward, so I wrote out a list of things we had to do, like this is the kind of agriculture, this is the kind of education. I went bang, 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 bang through all of the different sectors of society, and he read it. And instead of like offering some suggestions and maybe rewriting part of it, he just sort of said, "Let me give it a shot." And I was like, what do you mean? This is gold. What are you talking? But what he realized was that all the stuff I came up with, what was good for 1992. But he knew that the change was much deeper than that. And so when he rewrote the thing, there was no relationship whatsoever between what I had written and what he wrote. Because what he wrote, he went into the fundamental principles of the Ecozoic. And he knew that these would be ways in which we would design things and shape things in the future. Again, it was another example of his profound wisdom in keeping track of the whole, including the future and where we. Well, I've never told that story, so Tom, that was for you. That was for you, Tom. I love that you've gathered us together like this. It's just so wonderful to think this amazing sage, walked in our midst. He's and this was the day he was born, a little squalling baby, and wow, what a life.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Who you are and sharing that Ecozoic, because that's the time we're in. That's what we're talking about right now. So many of us. And so we got about 10 after 6. So let's go with a couple of questions. While we still got a few minutes with everybody.
Questions are fine.
Are they?
Or,
okay, good.
Or it'd be cool to hear. I'd love to hear anyone say something about how Thomas helped them into their own path.
Sure.
Either directly or from his writing.
Not everybody at once, please. There we go.
Yeah, look at Sadiqa. You're muted. There you go.
I had a question.
Yeah.
My question is, I've loved the stories that you've told.
Thank you.
Just opened my heart, because I did not know Thomas personally. I only met him once, glancingly. But I have a sense of what a great person he was. And I'm just curious if all these experiences you've had of him and all these conversations, do you have any imagination of what he would say to us today in this time, in this place, in this milieu which we inhabit?
That is just the perfect question for Mary Evelyn. It really is. You know it. Mary Evelyn, come on, what would he say? She thinks in terms of systems way better than just about everybody. What would he say to us today?
I think he'd be baffled in certain ways by what we've just lived through for the last 4 years. But he would say that more than ever, the universe story is needed. It's not only relevant, it's the most all-encompassing way forward. So I think he would be right here saying, you don't give up with these obstacles, you keep going. And we have a lot of resources now, I mean, we've got the Journey film, and Brian did, such a great job in making it vibrant and accessible to people. And we've got Journey MOOCs and so on and so forth. And so I feel Thomas would be very, very excited. And in some ways, we're just moving this out. And there's an audio conversation that Brian and Thomas did together that we're going to release soon. And we're going to put some of his books into audio books and so on. So, and our students are very inspired by him. So
thanks, Mary. Let me say one thing, because you went over kind of quickly. These audio tapes,
yeah,
that are being put out. I mean, I was there. I would say, Thomas, what do you think about law? And then he would talk. So it's Thomas.
Yeah.
But I mean, even while he was doing it, in the very moment itself, I thought, this is the quintessential wisdom from Thomas Berry. So, keep your eye open. I mean, you won't believe. It's like rolling thunder of wisdom. Just keeps rolling out. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
So when will that come out?
Probably, I don't know, but certainly in December, I would think. But also Devin O'Day is working with us on the Journey project, is archiving all of Thomas's talks and many of Brian's works and so on. So there's going to be a major archive that's both audio and visual of his work, in addition
on the Journey website.
On the Journey website.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, Carl had a question. Carl?
Not a question.
Okay.
My response, what would Thomas want to say to us today?
Good.
He would say, continue to dream the dreams.
Nice.
I used his works to do a series of presentations here in Montreal at one of the parishes. And that was the title, Daring to Dream. We've lost, I sense, that freedom to dream dreams.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Here's another question, Brian. I'd love to hear more about what people who are steeped in all this are doing and seeing and sensing about the emerging future. And another one, there are many other ideas in Ecozoic that could have been chosen. What led to this profound choice?
Well, in Thomas's point of view, in his thinking, there's personal transformation of consciousness. So we all of us in one way or another at a personal level we're deconstructing what could be called a consumer consciousness, right? Mercantile, industrial, different words, patriarchal, but that's at the personal level. But for Thomas, his sense was that the real change is going to be in the transformation of our institutional systems. That is where we will see the emergence of a new era, Ecozoic era. So the institutions of the legal system, the economic system, the educational system, the cultural religious system, the governance system. So this is where according to Thomas, this is where the real work needs to be focused. It's all important. but when we actually have an economic system that has the earth as primary and sacred, and we find our way to enter into a mutually enhancing relationship with the earth community, we will be stepping into a new era. So that really was how Thomas thought. That's how he put together his ideas on the ecozoic.
Another question, how do you see spirituality in all of this process?
Okay, John, that's you. That's definitely John.
Well, Mary Evelyn's trying.
Well, no, I was just going to say we have to
Oh
go.
no, husband, wife. Oh no, oh God.
We have
You guys got
another
to keep going.
coming up. But John, why don't you jump in there?
I'm taken with the question about the current pandemic, and I asked myself, so Sadiqa, thanks for your question. This sense of the distance that we're caught in, the containment and feeling of distance from one another, and yet we have this capacity for intimacy, and it's strikingly available to us across the distance of space, Montreal to Connecticut to California and so forth. And
To Australia.
yeah, Australia too, yeah. Global, the distance is, we're made intimate. And Thomas loved that play between intimacy and distance. And it wasn't at all as if one held sway over the other, but the relationship between the two. And I reflect upon that now in these times where we're caught in containment, and yet our interiority comes forward in rather significant ways. We're given this time to develop our reflection upon ourselves, our understandings of ourselves.
Mhm.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think, with spirituality, I think it's got to be a process over time, over a
Yeah.
person's life, their whole life. Like Thomas, like you said, Brian, was born a baby, and look at how he processed his life all the way through. And some people would say he kind of left religion behind maybe a little and went into science and the ecozoic era. And needed to do what he needed to do because he was willing to change and transform. Episodes of transformation that he went through and we all go through. But it's 6:20, so I just want to say if anybody needs to go, because we were planning on it, and special thanks to John and Mary Evelyn, they're going to another talk. Thank you so much,
Tom.
to John, and to Elizabeth, my faithful co-moderator.
Yes.
And to Brian for showing up this year. Thanks, Brian, for showing up. Yes. All the great work that all of us do, the great work going forward into the ecozoic era, the Anthropocene period, and as I call it, the universe story eon that we're in now. So,
Tom, we are so grateful.
Thank you, Tom.
Good, very much.
You and
Hey,
Elizabeth
everybody.
and Brian, so great to see you all. Mary Quayla, I saw you over there.
if
Just
people
fabulous.
want to stay on, we can stay on. Otherwise, thank you so much.
The only person who would draw us away is Terry Tempest Williams, and she had asked us for a Zoom at 9:30 here.
Oh,
So we're
sure.
gonna jump. But we just love you guys and are
Love you.
so grateful. Okay.
Right
All
back
best.
at you.
Bye now.
Oh, Steady. So good to
Bella,
see you.
very good times. Come on.
Oh, fabulous.
Thanks, Tom.
Everyone stay well.
Hey,
Stay
Brian.
Stay
Thanks a
well.
lot.
Yes.
All right, John. Mary,
Bye now.
Mary Evelyn.
Thank you.
Betsy, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Brian, such great words of you and Thomas's relationship. I just really, you were right. It was for me because I'm in the universe story, right? Doing the calendar work, and these little tidbits help me all the way through. So
Oh, good.
thank you. Yeah, great.
I must say this gathering reminds me of a gathering at Gaia Books in 1992 when the Universe story came out. And it was just, I think the day after or a couple days after the election of Clinton and Gore.
Yeah.
And I think you and Thomas came into the room yelling, 16 years of an environmental president.
Yes.
and then the hanging chads came along. Remember those?
Who can forget?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary Coelho. Hi. I was asking people, and did Thomas ever give you a sense of what you were about in a way that, really was helpful?
Well, I did. When I learned the new story and it had a very kind of mechanistic background, I could not understand how could it possibly have happened that from the very early universe we became these complex things. How could that possibly have come about? And he told me to read Eric Chance's Self-Organizing Universe. And that really was very, very helpful.
What year was that?
Oh dear.
Roughly.
I heard Canticle at Cosmos in the early 1990s. And that changed my life. Your video has changed my life. I really caught on there. And it was shortly after that. I learned
It was after that. Yeah, that was like 1990. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not he answered my question in a way that is what I needed to read. So
that's such a great book.
yeah,
it's still a great book.
right.
Yeah.
So, and just
Thanks.
I just went to the lectures too. There's some lectures at that period. Yeah.
At Riverdale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I have to say I didn't understand until I heard your video series.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I often reference the Canticle to the Cosmos.
Okay.
Right.
I was
Very
wearing my
important.
Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, right. I remember that white shirt.
Nobody took
Like
me
my
seriously.
Yeah, kind of like my orange shirt.
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, you're carrying the torch.
Yes,
Good.
yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. Could I ask a question?
Yes, as long as we can see you.
Oh, no.
Okay, go ahead.
9:30 on the East Coast. Come on, Anyway, my question is, did so many people really revered and loved Thomas, and so many, whole lifestyles and everything and educational methods came about because of him, and where did he feel that his legacy was most revered and most fulfilled? Where did he feel most gratified?
Where did he feel most gratified in terms of people that responded to him?
As his legacy being fulfilled, he initiated, as you put it, he initiated so many people into his destiny, their destinies, as have you, Brian. Yeah. And I just wonder, where did he feel like his own destiny, his own legacy was most fulfilled? Yeah,
that's a great question. I'd have to think about it, but I can tell you something. I can tell you one thing I know that's related. I mean, if he were here, we could ask him, but he always had such interesting responses. But I did ask him one time who he most wanted to reach. That's related. So what group did he most want to reach? And I said, do you want to reach the scientists? The politicians? What about the Christians? I'd ask him these questions, or maybe. And he said, I most want to reach the leaders, and the leaders of this new era. He didn't mean Washington, D.C. And I said, wow, that's, you know, how would I find the leaders? And I remember I was at my friend Bruce Bhakti's house. We're on the couch, and I said, should I see if they know some science plus maybe some Taoism, or like what would be the indication of a person who is going to lead us in this way? And he said, the leaders of our time, he meant by really youth. He said they're the leaders, but in general, the leaders of our time are those who are most sensitive to the tragedy of the earth's withering away. So he just people that feel the destruction so deeply. Those, he said, were the leaders. And I know for sure he was delighted when he connected to these young leaders, potential leaders. But I never really asked him the exact question you're posing.
But that's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And it gives such forward momentum. His
Yeah.
visionary horizon
Yeah.
still glimmers. Always, always, always.
Exactly.
But
Carl.
we have a question from Chris, Gerald. Chris?
Oh,
Yes. I wanted to share, I learned about Thomas through Tom Spiritbringer.
yeah.
And Tom Spiritbringer shared a quote with me, which is that one, gardening is a participation in one of the greatest mysteries of the universe.
Yeah.
And I'm an organic gardener.
Yeah.
And I have been doing organic gardening for almost 42 years. And I have found in my gardening such a unity with the universe through the soil.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it, except that it's the biggest blessing in my life is growing food.
Beautiful.
And sharing that food and doing it in a way that is healthy and is also healing our planet.
Absolutely.
And healing, well, not healing our planet, it's the way our planet heals itself.
Yeah.
It's simply following the guidelines of the planet. And it's moving in harmony in that sense. And so anyway, I share now when I talk with other farmers, I share that quote.
Yeah, beautiful.
And the response I get is one of deep joy from them.
That's great. That's great to hear, Chris. Thank you for that good work. The a movie has been made that's the same thing Chris is doing. But if you get, right now we're all jubilant, right, because of the election. But if you get down at all and you just feel a little bit depressed, watch this new movie, Kiss the Ground.
Yes, I've seen that. I was so elated at that.
It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Just what Chris is saying, and it'll just give you a burst of confidence that we are going to make it. We're going to make it.
Yes, yes, we are.
On Netflix, right? I think it's
on Netflix. Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's also a movie called Dirt
that's great too. Absolutely.
Yes.
And if you just want to feel just absolutely wonderful about this world of beingness, and you haven't seen My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, please do, because it's an absolutely extraordinary film.
Yeah,
And I almost
another
promise
amazing film. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Judith.
Yes, it's lovely to be here with you. Thank you. Last night we gathered, there were about 15 of us, and we were online, and Jared and I organized a celebration of the birthday, the eve of the birthday of Thomas. So we had 13 people, and we had a couple of Australians who we know who've been profoundly inspired by Thomas. And one of those people is a person who came back from his studies in the United States and began to dream about a mountain earth community, which is a couple of hours drive north of where we live. So Tony talked about the inspiration of Thomas in his work in developing that community of people. And we also combined some poetry and some music, the beautiful chanting of Kathy Sherman, who's a composer and a woman who lives in Chicago, her beautiful CD, Songs of the Universe. And we also unearthed a wonderful poem by Drew Dellinger, where he wrote a poem about Thomas Berry. It's on his website. It's a beautiful poem. And he talks about how, you know, this beautiful invitation of Thomas to us to simply unfurl. This morning I had a lovely collection of women online, and we're exploring some poetry which is really inspired by love of earth. And we're simply sitting in contemplative silence and allowing that earth-centered poetry to touch our hearts. So for me, it is really about falling in love with earth and, you know, that beautiful sensitivity. Part of my experience at the moment is really, you know, this beautiful thing about listening to the voices of nature. And there's a beautiful young woman, she's an environmental lawyer, and she is one of the beautiful inspirations behind an organisation here called Australian Earth Laws Alliance. And there is a movement of environmental lawyers around the world who recognise that the weight of environmental law has been on the side of human beings. And they are working and dreaming and acting to bring a balance between, in environmental law, between listening to the voices of human beings and listening to the voices of the natural world. And her work, her great work, is truly inspiring. I believe my great work in drawing together a group of women to sit in contemplative silence with some poetry which expresses a love of the earth is where I find my great work at the moment.
Oh, lovely, Judith. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Thank you, Brian.
Well, everyone, I think we should call it here. It's 6:35. But what a wonderful celebration of the universe, which we are all a part of psychically and physically. And carry that message on this next year of telling the universe story to everyone we meet in whatever mode or educational tool that we can to process towards a equal and just earth community.
Very cool. And everybody, let's thank Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
everybody.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Just so
Next
beautiful.
year, everybody.
This has been great.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Thomas, for bringing us together.
Yes, Mama.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Mahalo, mahalo.
Thank you.